So, New World Aeternum made some changes to the weapon skill trees, mostly shuffling abilities around, and because of that, people are mad at my guides because they're outdated now, except kinda not really, and in most cases, things are actually better, like with the sword. Leaping Strike was not a core part of the build. Did anyone watch the intro clip? It's all about the Whirling Blade spam, which fortunately is untouched. Now, if they removed the Tactical Strike giving us uncapped cooldown reduction per enemy hit, yeah, then the entire thing is bricked and I have to take down the video. But instead, we only got something better. And as I say in my guides are guidance. It's not like you must run this. They're about explaining the weapon and the class and showing you optimizations that you can use because everyone's situation is going to be different. Are you all PvE solo? Do you have a group? Do you need to fill different roles inside of that group? What do you want to get out of the game? The weapon skills aren't even a big part of the video. It's mostly like, hey, this is kind of what it should look like, and this is what I found to be more optimal. And for the most part, most weapons, by the time you hit like level 10 to 15 for a weapon, you have most of the skills, if not all of the skills that you care about. The biggest thing about my guides is showing you, hey, this is what in-game power looks like. Because gear and equipment and weapons are very expensive in New World, so it can completely ruin your experience if you spend all of your money on a class and then realize, oh, this sucks, or I'm getting bodied in in-game content, or I don't even like this weapon anymore. It's like, is this the power fantasy you want to have? That is what my guides are showing. And then people are just like, oh, but this looks different. Outdated video, re-upload. Which is kind of tragic because people that are that stupid are the ones that need guidance the most, and then they reject it. If you have an IQ above room temperature, you should be able to look at Upheaval and see that it's absolutely busted. A grit ability that does 200% weapon damage that also reduces the cooldowns of other abilities by 25%. So, as I showed, like, one of the things that can kind of go wrong with the build is if you don't hit enough enemies to immediately reset the tactical strike. Upheaval bails you out of that with insane damage. And then, like, yeah, now you just keep spamming and you keep the Upheaval for a big finishing move, but also a refresh on Whirling Blade. And then Defender's Resolve got buffed. Now, I can just scroll this. Final Countdown was something like, if you have above 50% health, you get 20% damage reduction, which is good. But if we're just going Sword Blender spam, Round Shield now increases base damage by 20%. While Defender's Resolve is active. Why is anyone playing Hatchet? Because the whole thing about Hatchet is that you go Berserk and then you carve everything up. With this, you go Defender's Resolve, reduce incoming damage by 30%, and then you get 20 base damage on your sword, which now has a stronger ability. I shouldn't have to re-upload my Sword and Shield guide to explain this, but I might have to because the general MMO community seems pretty dumb and toxic. Also, same thing for Life Staff, where it's like, it looks different. It got better. That instead of having to do like this for, actually, we can compare it to my Life Staff guide. So yeah, instead of having to put a point into something to get into Sacred Ground, which is the core of running Life Staff, they give it to you earlier. So now you go 1, 2, 3, and then you go 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So everything comes online earlier for the Life Staff. And my guide mentions the 2 different playstyles of Life Staff, so that's unchanged as well, that you can go for like clutch healing, where if people drop below 50%, you can get all the perks and all the stuff that gives them bonus healing on top of that. So yeah, you're just spamming Divine Embrace, you're hitting splashes of light, and then your Sacred Ground is really awesome. And then if you still want the Keen Beacon, you do that. And now Life Staff is pretty much the same. Maybe there's like some small number tweaks in here, but that seems to be like less of what happened with the weapon skills, and it was mostly just the ability orders that got mixed around. Now, the change to Great Axe is more neutral depending on your build. That used to be Reap on top, so you go Reap first, but then Whirlwind was second over here, and you had to take Heavy Pull, which, unless you're going for like CC Great Axe, which is more PvP, Heavy Pull doesn't really do anything in PvE. So it's like, oh, you just have to waste a point in Heavy Pull to get into Whirlwind. Now you have to waste a point in Greed, which gives you Empower on light attacks, even though most of the Great Axe build is just like trenchant heavy. So it's kind of like you're changing which tree you're wasting a point into, which has some weird effects, because like you still need to get Mauler's Fury. So now you have to take the like Unyielding, Crowded Protection, Center of Attention to get Mauler's Fury, and because we're wasting the point in Greed, we don't get Keen Edge. Critical damage being increased by 10% is kind of significant, but it's not total damage. It's just the critical damage. Like that 30% then gets increased by 10%. There's other damage calculations and weirdness inside of it, and it's only when you crit. So you're losing a small amount of situational damage that procs sometimes to keep your Mauler's Fury. There might be something where it's like, oh, you get rid of something. Like, you get rid of these two, and then you go that, and now you always have Bloodlust, where you get 15% more damage when looking at a foe. So, like, do you want to lead with 15% damage and always have 15% damage? Or do you want to use Gravity Well, Whirlwind, and then come out of it with a full Mauler's Fury, or like 9 stacks of Mauler's Fury before you do your first heavy attack on a Great Axe? Like, yeah, Mauler's Fury, usually this is, like, going to be more damage, but Bloodlust is also cool because you also gain movement speed. So you can run at enemies faster, and you can chain that better, which could be good for overall mobility and farming, and then you just have 15% damage. It gives you armor penetration and crit, but then you're also, like, can just get more armor and fortify, and then you also have the Mauler's Fury, which is going to have consistent uptime for the 30%. It's like, yeah, small changes. And if you're running Maelstrom, then maybe it makes things slightly weird, but that wasn't my build, so my guide doesn't change. And going back to what I talked about with weapon levels, you get your first couple of weapon levels so fast that the abilities don't even matter, especially in the early game. Like, if you're playing for the first time, you just go into a settlement, and then you light attack everything until you hit, like, level 5, 6, and then you have everything you need on the abilities, and you just kind of farm through, and you upgrade as you see fit. And then sometimes, like, yeah, you have to bounce around, so it's like 1, 2... 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There, we're in the core of our build before level 10, and it takes almost no time to even get to level 10 on weapon skills, and we have most of what we're looking for, so you just naturally progress from there with what you're looking at. Maybe some complexity with the Great Axe, but it's like ability. This grit thing is also a big part of the build, since we're doing, like, trenchant heavy attacks, and then you go Gravity Well. But then after that, it's like, alright, we want to get the sustain from Reap, and you hit level 8 or 9 before enemies actually get challenging enough for the skills to matter, so it's like, yeah, you just get everything you need for free, and then you just, again, build out from there, because with the Great Axe, you hit Feed. Great Axe attacks against foes below 30%, heal you for 10% of damage done. That's really all you need. That you pop off on one weapon, switch to the Great Axe when they're at half, you use all of your abilities, they go below 30%, and now you don't die because you get all of your health back. You go Fatal Attraction, so your Reap hits twice and then heals for 30% in a crowd of enemies that are at low health, and then boom, you Reap with this, and then you get all of your health back, and then we also have, when you critical hit, you heal yourself, and then you can also get crit on below 30%, and then you just have crit, and then you just live, and then the rest is, like, quality of life, where it's like, okay, Crowded Well is good, and then Fortifying, Crowded Protection, and at some point you find Mauler's Fury. Yeah, leaving 30% damage on the table until you max out a Great Axe does feel pretty ugly, but if you get a life-stealing Ring or a life-stealing Great Axe or the Blood Drinker, then yeah, you don't need the critical condition plus critical gains, and you can get into this sooner, while also finding armor and fortification, which is going to make you tankier and less reliant on needing life-stealing effects. But, like, this is actually the core here, and then you find the other damage, and then you put the points in, and then you're good. So yeah, the weapon skill changes, like, 98% don't matter. Please develop game sense and comprehension skills. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.